I'm really happy to be with all of you today. My role at Raphael House is a communications coordinator, so I'm on our fundraising team. And so I have a little bit of expertise in our team works with the public to get resources. So today I'm going to be talking about how our congregations can best support nonprofits, our local nonprofit domestic violence agencies. So from the nonprofit side, I have an understanding of what that actually looks like for our end. I just want to start with a little background. Excuse me. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men and 1 in every 2 transgender and non-binary people will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. So that means when we look around this room, 1 out of every 3 of us have experienced it. So if that's you and you need to take some space, you need to take a break, or you need to exit and not be here today, do what you need to do to take care of yourself because you are important. This isn't exclusively a women's issue, so you're going to hear me use more gender inclusive terms like survivor, and I also don't usually say victim or battered women. Those terms are not empowering to the person who's experiencing it. So as you're kind of talking about it later, I'd recommend using the term survivor instead. Domestic violence we often think about as a physical thing that happens to somebody, but domestic violence is about someone exerting power and control over somebody else. So yes, it can be physical, but it's often emotional, financial, verbal, and spiritual. So because it's so common, that means that a lot of us are going to have the opportunity to respond to someone who's going through it. And sometimes it's hard to know what to do, and that's okay. The first and most important thing you can do if someone shares with you that they're facing domestic violence is to believe them. Tell them that you believe them. Trust them that they know what's best for their lives. Survivors are the expert in what they need. You might think that they just need to leave that relationship, but the time someone leaves a relationship is the most dangerous time for them. So they might be safest being in an abusive relationship. So trust that they know what's best for them. And then offer your support. You might not know what to do, and that's okay, but you can offer to call a crisis line together. You can call a crisis line and say, hey, I have a friend going through this, or I have a member of my congregation going through this. How can I help them? Those crisis lines are there for you too as a support person. Something I've heard from people from survivors who have been members of churches is they've had people say to them, I'm going to pray for you, and then they don't do anything to help them. So just please keep that in mind. If yes, pray for people, but also offer your tangible support to them. And the best thing you can do is ask them what that support would be most helpful. So the intersection between our faith communities and domestic violence can be life-saving, the way we incorporate this into our faith life and our faith congregations. We can play a role either in healing or we can play a role in harm. So it's really important for us to pay attention to this because it really is a matter of life and death. Domestic violence, as we're talking about supporting these organizations, I don't want you to think about it as something that's happening out there and people out there we need to help, because it is happening in your congregation. So yeah, we're talking about supporting people who are in our communities right now. So as we move into places where we're supporting our local domestic violence agencies, that means we also need to be prepared to support people who are experiencing it now. So I want you to think about what kind of skills and training does our congregation need to support people. We're going to talk about opportunities to apply for grants today to help with this, and maybe part of that money needs to go for a training for your congregation or for your pastor. I know there's a lot of pastors in this room, so, and other people, elders that are speaking publicly in front of your congregations. So naming it publicly as a problem is something that's really powerful that you can do too. And then think about how your congregation can take part in prevention. Do you have healthy relationship classes for youth or for marriages? In what ways are you talking about sex and gender inequality in a way that is empowering, especially for women? Do you have divorce care in your congregation so that women feel like women or men who are in these relationships and want to leave their partner don't feel like they're also going to lose their faith community? And the more we can talk about it, the more we can take away the shame of it so that people can get the help that they need. So the big thing I'm supposed to talk about today is how can we as congregations support the people that are being harmed by supporting our local domestic violence agencies. So you guys to imagine a bullseye. So at the center of the bullseye are the people who are experiencing harm. That's the survivors. They're the experts in what they need. So our goal is to figure that out and respond to what it is that they're asking for, which is just what Kathy was talking about a few minutes ago. So survivors are at the center, and then wrapped around them are nonprofits who are looking at them and saying, what do you need, and responding to it. And then around that, the third circle is community partners, and that's us. So we want to be looking in and saying, what is it that the nonprofit needs? And the nonprofit is looking at the survivors and saying, what do you need? Survivors are the experts in their own lives, and so we want to be responding to that. As we're brainstorming today about ways we can support our local shelters and domestic violence agencies, we might come up with some really great ideas, but I want you to be open-handed with these ideas you come up with, because you might say, oh, we definitely should do a food drive. That would be really helpful. But then the nonprofit might, they might not have space to distribute food. Survivors might not be asking for that, or maybe they already have a partner that meets that need for them. So be open-handed with the ideas you come up with, because you can use these ideas maybe to support a different nonprofit. So the first thing I want you to do as you're kind of thinking about how to help is you can reach out to the nonprofit and say, hey, can we have a conversation about what you all need? We'll be brainstorming our gifts and skills and talents, and then you can talk to them about their needs and figure out how are those overlapping. When you reach out, call their administrative lines. Don't call the crisis lines. They won't be able to help you in the way that you need. Be patient with them, because I promise they're busy and they have too much on their plates. Another important thing I want you guys to remember is there is a cost to your help. So if you do a toy drive for the kids at the shelter, it's going to take time for the staff to accept your donations, time to sort them and distribute them. They have to pay for the space and that those toys go into. They have to do a donation receipt. They have to do a thank you. They have to enter your donation into a database that has to go through their accounting. They have to take time to answer your questions. So they're spending a lot of time and energy on your help. So do everything you can to minimize their time by doing what they ask you. Really pay attention to what they say they need. We've had a a really wonderful group that likes to do donations, but they'll say, hey, we have 10 gift bags and you can come on Saturday between 10 and 10:30 to pick them up off my front porch. And as wonderful as those gift bags might be, they're asking for too much from our staff to accept those donations. So don't be that guy, be the person that goes out of your way to make it easy on your nonprofit. Or if you're doing a one-time volunteer event, we say, hey, we have the people and we want to come do yard work. It's going to take the nonprofit a lot of time to plan and organize your group and to train you. So think about if you want to do a volunteer event, maybe you also need to raise some money to make a donation and cover the cost of their time to let you come in and do a volunteer time. Because as wonderful as those things are, there's a cost to your help. And I want to say that in the most encourage, don't let that discourage you. Just take it into consideration as you're thinking about ways you can be supportive. So today we're going to brainstorm about our resources, our skills, our gifts, our talents. So I want to give you guys a few categories you can sort of think about. First of all, how can you be an advocate? How can you be a person that takes the information and puts it forward into the community? One thing that every church could do really easily is hang information about crisis lines in your women's, men's, and gender neutral bathrooms. So people have access to that information somewhere private. Put it on your bulletin boards. Another thing you can offer is say, hey, we want to distribute information about your nonprofit. So can we get a bunch of mailers or fundraising pieces and distribute them with bulletins or to our congregation in another way? You can be putting that information forward. You can have information about the nonprofit. Maybe if you have a rummage sale, you have that information that you hand out to everybody who purchases something at your rummage sale. Every single person today can get out your cell phone and save the National Domestic Violence Hotline into your phone. In case you're ever in a situation where somebody needs it, you have that on hand. Also, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Maybe there's an opportunity to share publicly information about domestic violence from the pulpit. Next, fundraising. If you're thinking about raising some money to donate to your nonprofit, the most helpful thing you can do is do unrestricted funding. You might say, hey, our congregation really cares about your youth program, but if they might have funding already for their youth program. So the best thing you can do is trust the nonprofit with your money and your resources, that they know what's the best thing to do with it. If you're thinking about fundraising, you can think about how to make your money go further. So maybe you have a match. Maybe you have an extra $100 from this grant and you say, hey, everyone who donates $1, we're going to match it with this extra money. You can think about another thing you can offer is to be a connector. You can say, hey, we have this whole congregation that's full of knowledge and resources. So I want to offer to be a person that you contact if there's an emergent need. So maybe the refrigerator breaks down in the staff kitchen and they need somebody to fix it. And they can call you and say, hey, is there anyone in your congregation who has these skills and is willing to help? So you can be a person to connect people with the resources. And you can be explicit when you connect with the nonprofit about, hey, this is a way we want to help you. I also want you guys to think a little bigger about how to amplify your impact. So you call the nonprofit and they say, hey, we have a big need for African-American hair products in our shelter. So instead of maybe raising the money and then purchasing this off of Amazon, maybe you want to purchase those items from a local Black-owned salon. There's ways that you can support your community in layered ways. So just try to think a little bit bigger of who are we impacting with this project that we're doing. You can think about ways to support the staff, maybe through making cards to thank them. I know that's a wonderful ministry a lot of you have. Maybe you want to give the gift of food or small gifts to the staff to help the helpers. Maybe your congregation has space.